The Carolina rig is a fishing technique as old as time itself. As a matter of fact, if your grandpa taught you how to fish, the Carolina rig was probably his favorite technique. In today's video, I'm going to break down the Carolina rig in Masterclass format from A to Z, beginner to advanced, and even share a secret at the end that will skyrocket your success with using a Carolina rig. My name's Tyler, and let's talk about it.
Another giant, another giant. Look at that, y'all.
I can't believe what I just caught.
Yes!
This video is brought to you by Infinite Outdoors, my merch brand. More on that to come later in the video. So the Carolina rig, the old-fashioned ball and chain, what is it and what's its purpose? Well, the main component being what actually hooks the fish is just a standard weedless, weightless soft plastic, but what changes is where the weight is positioned on your line. A standard Texas rig, as you see here on the screen, has the weight up against the nose of your worm, your creature bait, whatever you're throwing. But the Carolina rig has the weight up the line and the soft plastic following. Its purpose is to get a weightless soft plastic down to the bottom of the lake, the pond, whatever you're fishing, and quickly and effectively fish it on the bottom throughout the entirety of the retrieve. And I say easily fish it there because if you were to get a weightless soft plastic down to the bottom, it is almost impossible to actually retrieve that thing quickly back to you and effectively back to you while keeping it on the bottom. Anytime you move a weightless soft plastic, it brings it up in the water column and you have to wait for it to sink back down to the bottom. And I know one thing is true about soft plastics: for the majority of them, you want them on or near the bottom. So now that you understand the purpose and the category of the Carolina rig, let me show you how I put it together. Now, when I first started bass fishing, the only Carolina rigs that I ever saw out there looked something like this. It consisted of a main line, a lead or tungsten weight, a glass bead, sometimes a clacker, a swivel, a certain length of fluorocarbon or monofilament leader material, and finally a hook. The question is though, is all this actually necessary? I don't think so. I think the idea of having all that terminal tackle there to make noise and get a bass's attention is great in theory, but does it actually get you more bites and catch you more fish? I'm not so sure. This is my Carolina rig setup consisting of just 4 main pieces. My main fluorocarbon fishing line, a tungsten weight, a Carolina keeper, as we'll talk about here in a second, and a wide gap or straight shank hook. This one here is the VMC red line. I love this thing. It doesn't require a super strong hook set to penetrate, and of course the hook set is ultra crucial, as we'll talk about here in a bit. So step 1 is to thread your line through your weight. Step 2 is to pinch the Carolina keeper open with a pair of pliers and slide it onto your line. Make sure, like I said, that it is actually pinched. That way it does not fray your line on the way up, because it can be a hard plastic edge on the inside. In step 3, and the last step, you tie your hook on. That is the simplest way I've ever seen to make a Carolina rig. But at this point, you're probably wondering, Tyler, what the heck is a Carolina keeper, and why have I never heard of it? Well, to answer the second question, I have no idea, because it took me a long time, really until like 2 or 3 years ago, until I ever heard of these things. But they are a game changer for Carolina rigs. It is a cylindrical piece of plastic with a slit cut through the inside, accomplishing the same task as the traditional swivel, but this time, because you can pinch the hole, you can actually slide that stopper that makes the Carolina rig leader the length it is. You can actually make that fully adjustable on the fly. The same thing could also be achieved by using a bobber stopper instead of a Carolina keeper, but I found the Carolina keeper is a little bit stronger and keeps that weight in place way better than a bobber stopper can. And for any Carolina rig weight over ½ an ounce, I will put a second Carolina rig keeper. I don't think it hurts the action of the bait, of course. I don't think it grabs any more grass. It just makes sure that the weight, when you cast it out there and pull it through cover and structure, cannot slide down the line itself. And with just one more step, the Carolina rig is fully put together, and that is choosing our soft plastic. And there really is no right or wrong answer here. It's all a confidence thing. So if you like a certain weightless soft plastic up shallow, it'll probably also work on a Carolina rig. The 2 things to keep in mind though are weight and drag. If you're throwing a big old 10-inch Magnum worm on a Carolina rig, that can work, especially on big, deep bodies of water, but you got to think that is heavy. It can become hard to throw. It is like a kite in the wind. You're not going to be very accurate with it. And so I like to throw the smaller weightless soft plastics like the Strike King Super Fry, the Caffeine Shad, the Game Hog, and of course the Fat Baby Finesse Worm. Now, of course, we have to talk about the rod, reel, and line that is best for a Carolina rig, and I'm going to be a stickler about this, but I think a Carolina rig should be thrown on no shorter of a bait casting rod than a 7'3". I throw a 7'5" Lew's Signature Series. This rod is literally built on the name tag for a Carolina rig. The reel should be any relatively fast gear ratio. I'd say above 6s, but 7s and 8s work great, because a lot of the time a bass will eat your weightless soft plastic and and run towards you, and so you need a fast gear ratio to quickly pick up the line and then set the hook. Now when it comes to line, I use 17-pound Seaguar InvizX fluorocarbon. You can use whatever line you want, but I've just found for those super long casts to get a good hook set into the fish, I want as little stretch as possible, and 17 is a good happy medium for me between 15 and 20. So now that we are fully rigged, let's talk about how to cast this thing. Now I know a ton of anglers like to use a fully overhand cast, but unless you time it perfectly with the Carolina rig, you may get a really bad backlash or hook the buddy on the back of your boat. And so I use kind of like I'm swinging, the people in the Olympics that swing the ball around. It's almost like I'm doing that. And to do this, I'm gonna have about 1.5 to 2 feet of line from the tip of my rod to where the weight is. I'm gonna go backwards, let the rod load, and then sling the bait forward, making sure that I do a full follow through at the end of the cast. Casting distance with a lure of this many parts can be really difficult to learn at first, but I promise you, getting good at it will drastically increase your catch rate on the Carolina rig. Now I just mentioned leader length, let's touch on that as well as weight size. And instead of talking all this out, here's a helpful chart you can screenshot right now. And for leader length, that is entirely going to depend on how deep you are fishing and the bottom composition on your body of water. And if you're hopping and dragging your Carolina rig through aquatic vegetation, I would recommend a 1 to 2 foot leader. But again, find what works for you on your body of water. Whew, this has been a lot of information. Hopefully you've enjoyed. If you are not subscribed at this point in the video, what are you doing? Hit that button, join Team TRF. Now, before we hop on the front deck to show you guys how to properly fish the Carolina rig, I've got to tell you about my merch brand called Infinite Outdoors. For the longest time, I desired to have an outdoor-themed clothing brand, and Infinite Outdoors has a special meaning behind it. See, I believe in a God who loves us so much that he would send his only son to die for us on the cross to atone for our sins so we can have a relationship with him. I call that an infinite love. And along with that, there are infinite possibilities of making memories, catching fish, having fun in the outdoors. That's what Infinite Outdoors is all about. If you want to check it out, no pressure, but I will have the link down in the video description. It's infiniteoutdoors.com. Supporting would mean the world to me. But now let's hop on the front deck and talk about how to fish the Carolina rig. So now we've got to talk about how to properly fish the Carolina rig. And the first thing, and I think I've mentioned it already, but if I haven't, I'll say it again, long casts are extra crucial. So I'm going to make a super long cast over my area. Again, could be boulders, could be a rock flat, could be a grass edge, a brush pile area, whatever you're fishing. And I'm gonna let it get to the bottom. And really with a Carolina rig, there's only 2 main retrieves. You can slowly hop it off the bottom, but the biggest one that most people use, and I think is the best one, is the slow drag with like 7 O's. A slow drag. Now, you can go fast. That's kind of the perks of a Carolina rig, is you can quickly drag it, and that keeps the soft plastic kind of going weightless back there. I still like to go slower as opposed to faster, but you can find out what works on your body of water. So I'm gonna cast it out there. Again, let it get all the way to the bottom, and then reel in my slack so my rod tip is pointed at my lure, and then I'm going to slowly drag just like this, 3 to 4 feet, let it sit for a few seconds, reel in my slack, and do the same thing. Slowly drag, just like this. Occasionally you'll feel some rocks, some sticks, some grass, and you've got to learn to feel with this bait what's a bite and what is structure and cover down there, because you can actually feel that one. Yeah. Ooh, that one feels bigger. That one feels bigger. Still a nice one, not a giant. But I'm telling you folks, oh my, holy cow. Once you find them loaded, the Carolina rig can really go to work. And I think that big strong hook set helps to get the fish out of there. That way you don't mess up the school. Oh my, holy cow. Get him up in here, yes sir. Oh, and I have your line. Haha. I have my camera guy's line. Let me tell you though, when you jack them, you get them good. And I really think because the hook is separate, the soft plastic is separate from the weight, these fish can hardly even feel you down there, feeling the bite. Gosh, what a beautiful fish. Now, all this knowledge about the Carolina rig is great, but if you're throwing it in the wrong places where fish aren't, of course, you're not gonna catch any bass. I think the best Carolina rig locations are offshore areas that have some kind of change. And what this means to me is that the bottom composition goes from one thing to the other. It could go from small rock to big rock. It could go from no grass to grass, or grass to no grass. Every type of bass, largemouth, smallmouth, and spotted, love to live around areas of offshore change, and I don't think there's a better lure out there than the Carolina rig for quickly dissecting a big open area of underwater changes. Now, the last part that is crucial about the Carolina rig and causes people to lose a lot of fish on this bait is the hook set. Now, the reason why the hook set is so difficult on a Carolina rig is because, like I mentioned, the weight is separate from the worm. So if you're dragging it down there and a fish takes the bait here and goes this way with it, of course, you'll be able to feel what I call the wah, wah, wah of a fish going the opposite way, and it's time to set the hook in that instance. There's no question about it. But oftentimes, they will take the soft plastic and swim towards you. And so you go to keep dragging, and because this thing's weightless, it feels the same the whole time. And so you could drag for 10, 15 yards. As long as the fish is swimming towards you, you're never gonna feel it. And so because that happens often on the Carolina rig, that's why I use a fast gear ratio reel and a long rod. That way, as I'm dragging and I feel something interesting or different, I can then reel up really quickly, pull faster, and if I feel a fish, then I know it's time to set the hook. And the motion of the hook set, even though it's easy, is super crucial. So let's say I'm dragging, I feel what I think is a bite, I'm gonna reel my slack in all the way, even more than a Texas rig or a jig, pointing my rod tip at my bait, and then giving it a smooth, strong hook set up and to the side, and almost every time you're gonna get the fish in the mouth. Of course, just like a frog, you're gonna miss a few fish, but learning how to do a good, strong hook set on the Carolina rig will catch you a ton more fish. Now listen to this clip of me talking about the Carolina rig and what a bite versus the bottom feels like. It seems like when I pull and I feel something and then it goes, well, that's a fish. But if I'm just feeling, yeah, it was a rock. Like that right there is grass. I'm gonna snap it out. It didn't, there we go. That one pulled back. Yep, that one pulled back. That's a fish. Little guy. See ya, buddy. Not see ya. Haven't released you yet. Man, corner of the mouth. Gets them every single time. Let's go. For the longest time, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't have a good understanding practically on how to fish the Carolina rig, which is why it took me so long to make this video, but I think I finally have gained the confidence that I can teach you guys all about it as well. Now, if you enjoyed this video, I'm gonna leave a very similar offshore lure that can also be used to dissect areas of offshore change, and that is the football jig. I made a masterclass about everything you have to know on the football jig. I will leave it up here in the corner. My name's Tyler. As always, it's a pleasure to have you guys learning along with me, and we'll see you guys over in that video.